See, it started already. Son of a...
Well, before we were so rudely interrupted,
How rude.
it's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, for crazy comics and stories. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Rider. How you doing today, Joe?
Oh, the Chinese are coming. The Chinese are coming. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? They just invested in Dark Horse Comics. And they got a piece of Valiant. Oh, my gosh. Pretty soon all our comics are going to come in Mandarin. What are we going to do?
I don't read any of the Valiant books anyway.
We do read Dark Horse.
Yeah. Well, Boom was slowly being bought up by Fox, who's being bought by Disney.
Game over, man. Game over.
IDW is kind of a publicly held company, and I think they've got investors. DC is owned by Warner. Disney owns Marvel. No one knows what's going on at Image. Image is just kind of... They're a blob. They're an amorphous blob.
I can cough up one of those.
Well, please don't.
I'll mute. Oh, nasty.
Oh, yeah. Well, we had a topic last week and we got interrupted. And I liked our topic last week. So for those of you who didn't listen, and how dare you?
You have some nerve.
We were talking about, back in 1984, there was a memo that was sent to Marvel from Warner Communications saying, we would like to license our characters to you, our DC characters to you.
We will license you. Sorry, I'm all excited because Bohemian Rhapsody's in theaters now.
You just want to see it because Mike Myers is in it.
Damn straight.
But Marvel turned it down because they thought that they would get in trouble, that it would constitute a monopoly. But Joe, you and I started talking about how, what if... Oh, that was some nice music. What if Marvel did publish DC starting...
And in our Elseworlds...
Starting in 1987. Because we figured that... No, 86. 86. Because we figured that it would take about a year or so to get all the legal stuff done. And
so we were kind of fanficting how we would do it. And I think we came upon the idea that the Anti-Monitor would win. He would succeed in destroying the DC universe as we know it. His next site would be the Marvel universe, fresh on the heels of Secret Wars. And we could have it, the Beyonder was coming to Earth to ask for help, hence the beginning of Secret Wars 2 or whatever. But then there would be sort of a crisis in Marvel's universe. And of course, we couldn't have a complete crisis without DC coming to the rescue somehow. And
well, it's not a crisis without one of the Flashes dying. Wait,
well, we don't know because they're all dead. So it's not so much that they're dead; we have to figure out how to get them back going.
Yeah, but in every crisis, a Flash dies.
No, you're just making that shit up.
No.
Nobody died in Crisis on Earth X or Earth S.
No, but in Crisis on Infinite Earths, Infinite Crisis,
but that's
Final Crisis.
Years in the future. No. Right now we have one. Everybody's dead. So basically, what's interesting is with everybody dead, we don't have that weird thing where, okay, there's no Supergirl, there's never been a Huntress, there's never been an Earth 1, Earth 2, because everything's dead. You were talking about something that I've been thinking about. See, sometimes I actually do listen to you. How a lot of the things that came out of that, John Byrne's Superman, Prez's Wonder Woman, The Dark Knight from Frank Miller, were actually reworked ideas that, for whatever reason, got kind of poo-pooed. And then eventually they came back either as the correct way to do, or their current way to do it, or in the case of Miller, a really cool miniseries. We also were talking about a little bit about guys who didn't want to play along with the Crisis suddenly finding out they don't have a book to write because everything had been canceled. But the question being is, are we looking, would there be a month or two like DC did with their Flashpoint? Are we doing that type of event where nothing's being published by DC until these number ones start popping up? Or will we do like you did, just have, okay, we're going to do John Byrne, we're going to do Frank Miller, we're going to do Perez's thing, and have them publish and then eventually realize, oh, they're part of a separate universe.
See,
or just have them show up at the end of Secret Wars.
See, I had a different idea rather than, Marvel being part of the Crisis. My idea was Crisis, remember at the end of, I think, Crisis 11, they defeat the Anti-Monitor, and boom, everything goes white. And then
I think they lost. They didn't. It wasn't quite a win, but it wasn't a loss. I guess it depends on who you're rooting for, though.
Well, and then in Crisis on Infinite Earths 12, they're on the New Earth. And the Anti-Monitor in his final attack sends the Shadow Demons to kill a bunch of characters that they really don't want to have around anymore. My feeling would be that instead of it all ending in issue 11 and 12, issue 12 is when they stop the Anti-Monitor. And, when the one guy sees the creation of the universe, they stop that. Boom. End of Crisis number 12, white page. We don't know. The next month would be January.
Wait, run that one more time.
Okay, remember.
So they defeat the Anti-Monitor, but...
Well, remember, the multiverse at DC was caused because that one guy watched the creation of the universe.
Yeah.
I can't remember the character's name because...
Chronos, not a Green Lantern.
So, instead, they stopped that. And because they stopped that, boom, white, screen goes white. Although I would have it go red because of the red skies thing. But still, boom, that's it. That's how Crisis ends. The next month, January...
Well, what happened on 11, though?
You stretch it out. How hard would that be?
So it's not... The way I heard you say it was that, 11, they defeat the Anti-Monitor, and then you get to a new Earth. So it's not... They're still fighting for the multiverse. We just don't know what happens.
Well, in the real, in the Crisis that was published, that's what happened. In 11, they defeat the Anti-Monitor, and in 12, we have the new DC universe. Instead, you stretch that out, and the end of 11 is actually the end of 12. Boom.
What are you saying? We could stretch out a comic book in the 80s?
The next month, we have a DC line at Marvel, much like how we had a New Universe line and an Epic line and a Star line. It's the DC line. You get the Superman #1, Batman #1, Wonder Woman #1, and you start with the big 7. And your plan for the first year is to establish all these characters. And, depending on how sales are, maybe bring back, the Teen Titans. Bring back a few other books.
I got 2 questions, though, that we have to figure out first.
Okay.
When they gave up all their heroes to Image, Marvel that is, they tied it into a mega event. How would Marvel not tie it into a mega event?
We're getting
something
to that.
This big. Yeah, but you're already publishing them. And second of all, how long are they licensed for? With the Image deal, we knew it was for a year. Is this basically, this is an indefinite license until they decide to quit? Or is it, we're going to try this for a couple of years? Because that also will determine what type of books you're going to publish.
In the memo, it was a permanent license. It wasn't here, publish these. It was basically
Okay.
Warner Brothers said, we're getting out of the comic book business.
Okay, because
It's
that's
not
more
making money. Do you
because
want
with
it?
the Image deal with Heroes Reborn was, if I recall it right, it was they were going to do it for a year and see where it went, and I guess it didn't do too well because they came back.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's very significant because if it was going to be, this is going to be the new status quo. That's what we're working for.
Yep.
Now, who do you have a who's who of creative talent, or are you just bringing back? Okay, we got to publish, so let's publish.
No, it would be, the basically look at what was pitched and accepted at DC after Crisis. So Mike Barron on The Flash, John Byrne on Superman, Frank Miller does Batman. With the Batman Year One, George Perez does Wonder Woman, and maybe some other people who were Marvel people could move over. But if DC is shutting down, there's a huge talent pool that's available.
So the question still
So you
is,
kind of have a bake-off.
is this a Flashpoint type? Okay, these are new guys you've never seen before, so you can basically just start with a blank slate.
Yes, much like how John Byrne started with Man of Steel, we're retelling the origin.
So it's basically everything you know. Yeah, you can get excited because you might have prior knowledge, but you've never met these guys before.
Right.
Okay.
And you can strip away a lot of stuff. My problem with what happened after Crisis is they kept some and got rid of some, and it was really a mess. Because it's okay, Hawkman, nothing changed until later. Superman, yeah, well, some stuff staying, some stuff isn't. Batman.
They weren't ready to go as radical
Right.
as they did with Flashpoint, which is really too bad because they should have. It
Right.
would have, we've talked about the reasons why, and of course you can go look in back issue magazines for the story behind who was playing ball and who wasn't, because everything was a little fiefdom in DC. Whether they wanted to play with the big events they weren't or not was the individual editor's choice. Well, guess what? You're done.
Yeah.
Everything starts with number one.
And, you take DC's top 10 or top 15 books and you have a bake-off. All right, these are our big books. Give us a pitch. How are you going to restart this book?
Now, we're going off of what we saw in the 80s, because I would definitely want Roy Thomas to do, World War II All-Star.
Right.
Now, is it all one Earth? Are we going off that? Or is it going to be, there is a multiverse, we're just not going to play in it?
Well, we're going to get to that.
Because, the question is, you're going to bring back Shazam? Are you going to have the Justice Society be part of the old world? Or is it all together yet?
It's, at this point, we just know what's going on DC Earth. We're not going to find out about the past. We're not going to find out about the other universes. Not yet. Because what we're going to do that first year, build up to the forming of the Justice League to deal with a big, horrible crisis. And that crisis is what they find out to form the Justice League is that the DC multiverse was walled off by the Anti-Monitor from the full multiverse. And in defeating the Anti-Monitor, now they're in the full multiverse. So DC's Earth 1, oh look, there's Earth 2. Marvel's Earth 616. That's the big revelation. Then you start having crossovers, but you have them like you had them before, when it was Superman versus Spider-Man, or Batman Hulk, where they're just in the same world for some reason. And you've got, maybe 4, 5, 6 crossovers for the next year, but they're all building to something in that the characters in the regular books, Spider-Man doesn't mention the fact that he has hung out with Superman. Batman doesn't mention the fact that he fought the Hulk. But we've seen that. This is going to lead to the first crossover between the two, And again, you don't do it all at once. I hate one of the things that Marvel and DC and a bunch of companies do is they hotshot everything. It's, oh, we have to do it all at once. No. If you build to it, you make more money. Think about your favorite comic stories.
I question that theory because I got to admit, with New 52, yeah, they made money right away because everything, and everybody was excited to see the number ones, but it really petered out. The question, it may be because it was too much too fast.
That was part of it, and they also didn't go somewhere.
Well, they had something going on because I was reading Grifter, and there was things going on behind the scenes that were going through all the books. But for the life of me, I couldn't tell you what the big reveal was. So whatever they were planning, by the time it came to fruition, I'd either tuned out or it just fizzled.
And you've got to also do what Marvel does now, where they get together, they have that writers' conference. Okay, we're going to plan out the next 5 years. And then they get together the next year and, okay, we've moved forward a year. We're going to plan out the next 5 years. Let's take a look at what we've done so far. Can we tweak it? Can we change it? Can we add to it? Can we, are we still heading that same direction? Have we decided on something else? But you're building, the first year you're building up for the Justice League and the big reveal that they're part of the multiverse. The second year, you're doing these crossovers. And you build up to the big reveal that DC coming into the multiverse hasn't quite worked right. And there's this weird thing that's happening between Marvel and DC where they're clashing, almost like hyper time. They're clashing together and pulling apart, and clashing together and pulling apart. And as you build up to it, it's, oh my gosh, we've got to figure out what to do to save the universes. And that's where you get Avengers JLA.
Okay, I need to know one thing though. Are you saying that the Superman, Batman, or Superman, Spider-Man, Batman, Hulk, those happened even though those are pre-crisis?
Yes. And it's in this weird mesh between the two universes. They're banging together. And of course, Avengers JLA, they're going to try and stop that, and they realize that the Anti-Monitor and the Beyonder are both still around, and they're fighting over which universe survives.
Yeah, I think the only real problem I have is if you're starting new, you don't want to grab anything old. Now, the question is, are you going to be retelling those old Spider-Man, Superman, or are you going to just be reprinting them?
Yeah, reprint them. Get them out there in a trade.
Well, again, this is pre-trade, so you can't really push it in a trade.
There were trades in the 80s.
You're not going to get someone to pop $20 on a reprint trade to follow a current storyline. What you're going to have to do is publish them in comic book form, much like you did X-Men Teen Titans. Because that will be what you're going to get the casual fanboy to buy. So, because you're not going to, you can't tell somebody, okay, you're going to have to buy this graphic novel in order to follow what's coming up or reason why.
But you don't have to understand it.
What I'm getting at is don't pull old shit forward if you're trying to start new. Granted, those old tales are cool, but maybe you can, what was the bridge them in somehow with like some new artwork, or maybe republish Spider-Man, Superman in a comic book size, not a tablet, not a graphic novel, and just, you're saying that the characters don't remember meeting each other?
No. When they're together, they remember it, but when they aren't, they don't. Much like the Marvel and DC crossovers they did in the 90s, where Spider-Man and Superman both worked at the Daily Bugle.
Yeah, no, the execution doesn't work. I'm thinking in the 80s, and you've got these old pre-crisis stories that you're suddenly going to make relevant. You're going to have to reprint them somehow.
Right, but you don't... The thing is, Joe, you're saying, oh, we're going to use that. No, it's like if somebody says, well, wait a minute, did those happen? Yeah. I'm thinking the Mike W. Barr School of Continuity. Refer to it if you need to, but you don't need to know it.
Well, you're going to need to if it's going to be leading up to something.
No, the
Otherwise,
crossovers after the Justice League. That's when you're going to get some crossovers. Because people are going to say, oh my God, Marvel and DC, Marvel owns DC. When are we getting the crossovers? Boom.
How are you going to tell the audience that, hey, you know what, you need to go back to 76 and pick up this Superman Spider-Man crossover because it's going to matter? No, I'm not, because I don't get what you're explaining here.
All right. After you bring the Justice League together, let's say you do Daredevil Batman. That comes out.
Is this Doctor Who retro continuity where all of a sudden, oh my God, I remember.
Past, Joe.
No, listen to me. Or is this where you're thinking like the new doctors don't remember the old doctors, or the old doctors don't remember the new doctors until it happens? So the 12th Doctor didn't remember meeting the 11th Doctor until the 11th Doctor met the 12th Doctor. That type of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. So when the Justice League get together and they start figuring this out, Superman suddenly realizes, wait a minute, I met Spider-Man. Why didn't, kind of like what happened in the JLA Avengers we know.
Yes.
This isn't right, but I remember it happening.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that makes better sense. Because then now what you've done is you've created a demand, and I'm thinking this in business-wise, to reprint those old things, maybe in a graphic novel. Again, I've 80s, I think the graphic novels weren't really breaking in yet. So again, you're going to be fighting a business model that isn't necessarily true yet. Although this would be a great way, like you said, hey, all these stories are here. We're publishing this.
Yeah. But
I still think doing them as individual comics would be more lucrative, or do them both.
But after you bring the Justice League together, you do some specials. Oh, here's Daredevil Batman. Here's Wonder Woman, Ms. Marvel. You know, whatever works. And those are where you've got this, where the two universes are combined. And what you're doing with that is teasing the fans that you're going to bring them together. You want to tease the fans. You make more money if you tease for a while.
But you also got to keep continuity going, because remember, this is the 80s. This ain't the 90s where people, and you know, again, you got John Byrne who didn't really give a fuck about continuity anyways. So you got to make it that, yes, this matters in continuity-wise, because otherwise you're just going to have the same problem that came over post-Crisis DC, and of course also came over with Flashpoint. You know, what's relevant, when isn't? Why should I care? I don't care. I'm tuning out.
Well, that's because when we get to the end of the second year and we're going to have JLA Avengers, we find out that these two universes are clashing because the Anti-Monitor and the Beyonder are fighting over which one has dominance. That's why you're getting the crossovers, so that they matter.
I don't think in the 80s you could pull off such a long-term plan. You would have to accelerate it somehow. Because it's just not that tight. You're thinking like current day John Hickman type, okay, this is going to be one long ass story that's going to pay off in the end. Joe, I don't know if 80s audiences would buy that.
The first hint of the Monitor was in 1981. It didn't pay off till 1985.
I'm just saying you're not going to get a new creative line. You run the risk of you're going to lose every single DC person, and you're not going to get any Marvel people interested.
If I've got John Byrne, Frank Miller, and George Perez putting out comics, people are going to buy them.
Well, how are you going to sustain the interest?
By building up to the Justice League, by building up to the first Marvel DC crossover.
You're going to have to compress that somehow. I just don't buy today's storytelling in the 80s. I guess that's a premise I just can't. I mean, I'm excited about it because, hell, I think it would work nowadays. I think it's much more when they talk about the two bigwigs at Marvel and DC getting together and dropping hints. I'm like, oh, that would be so cool if they were planning a big Marvel DC battle for a couple of years down the road.
I think you're not remembering how things work. The Thanos story, that was a 7-year build-up, Joe. Fans didn't mind a build-up. They did.
I don't think it was planned that way. I think it just fell in that way. I mean, again, you're giving modern day sensibility to 70s comics, which I don't buy is true.
We're going
because it
over.
was just like Starlin just was, hey man, I'm not tripping anymore, but damn, this Thanos dude's cool. Let's do a great storyline. Because
We're reading
otherwise,
Master of Kung Fu, and he was dropping hints that didn't pay off till years later.
that's the problem. You don't have that ability to do that now, or then I should say.
I'm talking about then books that did it then.
I don't buy that it would
Roy
work.
Thomas did it
The bottom line.
all the time.
He had a singular book and was editor. I just don't buy it would work then. I don't know. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I'm just saying it didn't work for New 52. I doubt it would work for what we're proposing here.
I don't know. It worked for Spider-Man. It worked for Fantastic Four.
In the 80s, I remember years of things where it just didn't pay off. Or we did have single issues and things like that. Okay, say what would you do? Well, Shooter's going to be in charge. He's running Marvel. That's what
Not if I'm booking it.
Well, by the
way, you're in the Cory universe. He was out the door by 87 anyway.
And this is where the concept falls apart. Maybe 86, 87, maybe we'll play.
We're the bookers, Joe. We're the editors.
But I'm trying to keep it based in what we see coming. Because like you said, yes, John Byrne, Superman, big hit. Wonder Woman, everything else, big hit. But then again, it's also a question of, well, we already know why. Tom Warner doesn't want to publish comics.
Yeah. And by 89, DC was outselling Marvel.
Well, let's flip it. What the hell's going on in Marvel while you're busy playing footsie in DC?
Marvel's still doing what they do, but they're kind of weirding out that their universe is getting all these glitches. You're dropping hints in Marvel books as to what's coming for the big Avengers JLA crossover. And you're not letting me get to my... Okay,
well, that's because I'm still having trouble. You're putting in 2,000 comic selling points into 80 storytelling, and it's again a different world back then, because if you were only selling 100,000 copies, you got canceled. Nowadays that's your god in this realm. But okay, keep going. Let's see where you're going.
Okay, so after Avengers JLA, we think the universes are saved. And let's mix things up. Let's have some Marvel characters go to DC and DC characters go to Marvel.
Oh, now you're just stealing an idea I said years ago.
But you're pitching it, and okay, have some characters switching back and forth, much like how, at DC, characters would go from Earth 1 to Earth 2. And this is what the fans think they want. Okay? We're giving them what they want. But as we realize, as things start to go into this third year, the fix didn't work, and things are getting glitchy and weird again. This leads to Marvel versus DC, which is the thing the fans really want. And we find out one universe survives, one universe goes away. Now my question to you is, do you pay that off by having everybody go to one universe or the other, or do you do the schmoz finish like they always do with these? You've read every time it's Avengers versus Defenders and one team will die, where they have a schmoz finish and the heroes figure out a way out of it. My feeling is you have the heroes figure out a way out of it, and then you treat Marvel and DC like you treated Earth 1, Earth 2. Every year you've got the summer crossover between the two. But you have the big Marvel versus DC. Who's going to win? Batman versus Captain America, Wolverine versus Lobo. That's when you have it that would be in 1989. When you're starting to get the special cover collector people coming in. I think that would just blow up sales, because you're going to spend a whole year of them fighting. You can have the creators say, I'm going to do a 4-part story, 2 parts in my book, 2 parts in Batman, of my character versus Batman, or Superman versus this, or even villains back and forth. You've got a year of just messing with that, leading to Marvel versus DC. That's how I would book it, and I would keep.
I think
Marvel
you're booking it more like a pro wrestling thing,
but I would keep it as Marvel is one universe, DC's another universe, and they cross over from time to time. Because the characters don't work in each other's universes. In Marvel, the heroes, everybody says, oh, everybody hates the mutants, but really nobody trusts the heroes in the Marvel universe. Most
Yeah.
of the stories are, even Captain America. How many times has it been, we can't trust Captain America anymore? I'm reading the Captain America omnibus from the 60s. Every 3-4 months, it's, we can't trust Captain America anymore. Or the public hates him. How many times did the public hate the Avengers? And at DC, Superman, nobody hates Superman other than Lex Luthor. Superman's the big blue Boy Scout. He's got to be. Yet at the Flash, they have a museum for him because he's saved the Central City so many times. The universes kind of have to be different for the characters to work. And I think also the fans want there to be separation so that the crossovers are special and mean something, much like the JSA JLA crossovers. That's my opinion. What would you do after you find out the Beyonder was fighting the Anti-Monitor?
Well, see, I wouldn't go your way to begin with, because I don't believe that type of sustained storytelling would necessarily work in that environment. Plus, you also have problems with, okay, oh, guess what? George Perez's Wonder Woman sucks. Now he's off it. What do we do?
He was on it for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, but what happens if it didn't sell? Just give me a, for instance, like, okay, nobody liked The Dark Knight. I know, hard to believe. What do you do now if it doesn't work? Or you have a creator fit and John Byrne's suddenly gone? It just...
It's the same thing you do now. You bring in the next guys.
I still don't see the sustained storytelling in the 80s like you insist was there. And if it happened, it happened more. It happened more by... Oh, see, that's a bad example because half the time Claremont got it because he was on it, not because he had any frickin' clue where he was going. Yeah, there were reasons why. I mean, those books after they killed Jean Grey in the issue 5 or whatever it was, 100, 150, that were a hot mess. I mean, just constant things of storylines popping up and disappearing and not going anything. I think a lot of my concerns would be alleviated by like you said, the storyline summit, which I'm not aware of. Did they have those in the 80s?
They had, actually, it was more that the editors drove the stories more at Marvel in the 80s. Chris Claremont was kind of a rare example, but look at when John Byrne left Avengers West Coast in a huff. Roy Thomas came in, kind of had an idea of what was going on, pitched how to tie up the loose ends, and move forward with his stuff. Or John Byrne on Superman. He left in a huff. Okay, well, Superman is killed. We're going to do a story where that kind of freaks him out to kind of show that this is why Superman shouldn't kill. They did the where he went out into space and met all these...
Yeah.
If a creator leaves in a huff, if the editor has an idea of where they were going, they can bring in the next creative team, say, all right, here's where he was going. Here's where I want us to go. Look at the Superman books in the 90s. 4 different creative teams. But they all were going in the same direction. One story would drop in one and show up in the other because there was a strong editor who got everybody together and said, this is what we're doing. Bob Harris, when he took over the X-Men, one of the reasons Claremont left is Bob Harris was the strong editor who said, all right, this is where we're going. Which is why when Claremont left, none of those plot threads got dropped. It's okay, Fabian Nicieza and Scott Lobdell, they're going to keep doing it. Sales are going to keep going up. That's what the editor does.
How many strong editors did we have in the 80s that could conceivably pull together this monstrosity of here's a DC universe, here's a Marvel universe, now let's keep them tied together for 3 years for the ultimate payoff?
I think there were enough. I think you got Denny O'Neil, you got Mike Gold, you got Mike Carlin. Look at what they did in their stuff. You had Karen Berger, who created Vertigo.
I haven't even gotten to that question yet. Are we going to have a Vertigo / Epic line?
oh, you've got to have Epic and Vertigo, because at the time Epic was doing well, and that's your creator-owned line. And if you're going to take over that much of the market, you're going to need to have a creator-owned line, because you're going to kind of want to keep people happy. And one of the things that was big, especially in 87, 88, 89, 90, was creator-owned. So, okay, tell you what, Neil Gaiman, we'll have you work on a book, and you can do this creator-owned stuff. Or even Alan Moore, because one of the reasons he left was because with Watchmen, he got fucked over. They lied to him.
Which imprint would you keep?
Oh, it'd be Epic. I would actually put Karen Berger in charge of Epic.
Now,
Vertigo didn't exist yet.
Yeah, I know. That's why I want to keep moving. Hang on a second.
You're fighting your headphones.
Headphones. Sorry. Okay, so let's keep moving forward into the future now, and events that happen will happen.
Fantasy booking, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, we might as well keep going, because now in the 90s is where I can actually pay attention, because that's when I had my shop. So we've got two universes, basically, DC and all. Now, does the multiverse as we know it exist in the? Or are they just part of? They're all part of the same multiverse.
They're all part of the same multiverse, because the way Marvel set up their multiverse isn't there's 5 Earths. They're infinite.
So if somebody comes along and says, "Hey, I got a killer way to bring back Shazam," fine. You Earth S, make it run. Or if they want to make it,
or you can say, all right,
I want it, but I want it in the Marvel universe, or I want it in the DC universe.
Yep, that would be part of the pitch. And a lot of what the pitches were back then is, all right, we need a Shazam book. Who's got an idea? And at the time, Jerry Ordway put in the idea that they liked. They call it a bake-off. I think you've got to have bake-offs, because that's a lot of what Karen Berger did. She just went to Neil Gaiman and said, all right, what do you want to do? What book do you want? And she's the one who brought in all that British talent. So let's say the same thing's happening in the late 80s. Go into this British talent and say, all right, what do you want to do? So rather than them all doing obscure DC characters, they'd be doing, okay, well, I'd like to do Skull the Slayer, or I'd like to do Prez, or I'd like to do Sandman, or I'd like to do Animal Man, or, because you're the only game in town, really, you open it up, and you have bake-offs. All right, we want to do a Captain Marvel book, a Shazam book, because we need to make sure that we still have the trademark on the character by having it show up.
You could conceivably call him Captain Marvel if you wanted, because you're all under the same publisher.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a big deal if you called him the original one.
Yeah.
So
but it would be, all right, who's got a pitch?
Cory Strode, publisher, how are you going to deal with the Watchmen / Alan Moore situation?
Not lie to him. First off, I wouldn't put out if I'm going to put out Watchmen buttons and Watchmen portfolios and shit, it's, well, okay, it says here that you get this % of any ancillary merchandise. Here you go.
So the question is, did our amalgam of DC Marvel publish Watchmen, or was it published before Warner gave up the ghost?
That would be a little hard to think, because remember, Watchmen was a Carlton pitch, and Dick Giordano, who was the guy who was in charge of those characters in the 60s, said, I don't want you doing this to my characters. But in where DC's not publishing anymore, 85 was their, was it 85 was their last year?
Yeah.
So anything after 86, he would have to pitch. And that, put it at Epic. That way he owns it.
So that's probably what we would have done. Like, okay, we don't want to do, we would have, again, this is where we can go off the rails and talk.
Yeah, that's where it's fantasy booking.
But it's kind of like, I would go off the premise, yes, Watchmen will get published. We're going to publish it as Epic. Alan Moore is going to own it.
Yeah.
Therefore, that solved the whole, and God knows what Alan Moore would have created for our weird little universe Hell, it'd be fun when we finally let's amalgamate the universe. That'll be one of our big crossovers. Something happens, the universe gets squashed together. Who would you have be the bad guy that did it?
Darkseid.
Ooh, now we're talking.
That way you bring back Darkseid and you make him a threat. One of the problems I have with Darkseid is people don't understand Darkseid is the dark force behind the bad shit. And he plans ahead. Remember that Kirby always said that when he wrote Darkseid, he thought of him as Richard Nixon. So Darkseid would be the one behind the two universes. One of them might die. Or he's the one, Darkseid becomes one of your big bads. And, if we're talking big cosmic thing, I could see where Galactus steps in and says, oh, no, my universe doesn't get destroyed. This is where my dinner bell is. So there's the John Byrne Galactus versus Darkseid.
All right, kind of like they did with the Ultimates. Galactus could suddenly show up in the DC side. I mean, I don't think he's necessarily bound by hanging in a universe, especially not if you could get a taste of your meal somewhere else. Maybe Galactus did destroy Krypton.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Certainly give Superman somebody to punch.
Yep.
Now, we talked about fantasy. We should have combined this with our old fantasy booking podcast we did a while back. Because now this is where we do things like, okay, Roy Thomas, recreate the golden ages of these universes. Go at it. Or if you want to make yourself an Earth 2 universe and just play with that characters, let's hear a pitch. Where we don't have to have, necessarily Power Girl hanging with the Justice League in our universe, but you want to make a real Earth 2 that we haven't really dealt with? Go for it.
Yep. And, you could say to Roy Thomas, look, Earth 2 exists. There's Earth 1. This is Earth 2. There's Earth 3. Marvel's Earth 616.
If you want to make it in the Marvel universe, you want to make it in the DC universe, or you want to make it your own Earth 2 universe, or maybe put together some pitches, like, hey, why doesn't anybody remember the Invaders Justice Society crossover?
There you go.
Boy, and I can't wait till we get the Ultraverse tied into the mix.
Well, that's the thing. Would the
90s.
Would the Ultraverse have gone away the way it did? Would Marvel have bought? Because the reason Marvel bought Malibu, they say it was for the coloring. It wasn't for the coloring, it was for the market share. Well, if Marvel's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, they're not going to need the market share. So when the Image Boys go off and make a whole bunch of money for Malibu that Malibu spends to create their universe, would it last longer? Would it have been more successful? Would the market have been too crowded for it? What would have happened with that? Would Image have been as big as it was?
Well, that's even, again, part of the thing here, because now, you and I are essentially the publishers. The whole thing when the Image Boys come to you and demand a bigger piece of the action, are you going to blow them off and say creators don't matter, only the characters do? Or will you accommodate them, maybe forego the whole creation of the Image universe?
Or have them create it as another imprint of Marvel. We've already got Epic. We've already got DC. You guys want to imprint? Cool. Bring us a business proposal.
Yeah, do it. Make your own universe. So you want to make a combined universe? Make it. You own it. Savage Dragon. Fine. Make it a Epic. You own it. You do what you want with it. And then there's always questions of like, what would the other publishers have been doing, or would they have popped up? Would there have been such a big run on making universes like there were in the 90s? Triumphant, Defiant, all these other Giants. I'm assuming we would have had the original Valiant around, just because I couldn't. If Shooter left, like you said, he would have come back somehow.
Oh yeah, he would have landed somewhere.
That early Valiant stuff was just brilliant. I mean, it was fun. He was that's I guess I could say I'll concede your point because he had the idea you build the universe slow and then you have the big payoff like Unity was, and then it just kind of fizzled because other people got involved.
But one of the problems that a lot of publishers have is they want to rush. They want to rush to the big sales.
That was always my complaint with the Ultraverse in Malibu. It was like 4 brand new titles every month.
And you know, in wrestling they call it hot shotting. You can't do a hot shot. You've got to build things. You have to build the demand. And I will always point to what Marvel did with their movie universe. That was a brilliant job of building demand so that when the Avengers finally came out, it was one of the biggest movies ever made. Why? Because they'd been building it slowly over time. They didn't just, like DC did. DC did the opposite. Here's a Justice League movie, and now we're going to have other movies, but nobody cares. So I guess we're doing an Aquaman movie, and maybe there'll be another Batman or we don't know.
Yeah, they are really kind of wishy-washy then. I mean, well, we're going to reboot Superman, Batman. I'm like, no. Just make up with Affleck, kiss Henry, and let's, if you don't want to make a movie, fine, but keep them there. Nothing's worse. Just how many Spider-Mans did we have before we settle on the one we have?
And how much of that was, okay, and it's always, okay, the first 3 movies, yes, the first one's the cheapest, then the second one costs more, and the third one costs more. By the time you get to the 4th and the 5th, people, you want me back? Well, remember how much it costs for 3? You're going to pay me double.
And that's what we talked about. Disney brilliant saying you're tied in for 7 movies.
Yeah.
Somewhere, somehow. You are tied in for publicities, for photo shoots, for standing still while we take your face to make an action figure. And for an actor, yeah, that's money in the bank. I got 7 flicks. I'm going to build a house and eat for the next 7 years or films. And now, of course,
people they're getting for their main stars at Marvel, when they're hiring them, they're not that big. Robert Downey Jr. could barely get movie jobs. He was appearing in low-budget films because he had burned so many, bridges. Chris Evans, what did he do before Captain America? The Fantastic Four. Yeah, he did the Fantastic Four, and those didn't do well. Chris Hemsworth, no idea what he did before Thor. Benedict Cumberbatch was a star. But for the most part, you look at the people that Marvel picked up, they were not high-level A-list actors at the time. And in comics, one of the things that Marvel did to get out of bankruptcy that I love, because there are people now who are talking about it online, because Joe Quesada is talking a lot about Marvel Knights. And Quesada said,
but most of the other people they had, not stars. They planned it that way so they could say, all right, we're going to give you a 7-picture deal. Like, if you went to Tom Cruise and say, we're going to give you a 7-picture deal, he's going to go, fuck you. You can't afford 7 pictures with me. But, a guy like Mark Ruffalo, who hadn't been in a movie with a budget over $5 million before he was in the Hulk, was like, you mean I have guaranteed work for the next decade? Yeah, I'm signing right now.
I wonder if some of these guys go to like Disney when they say, I know I get a cameo in this movie, but that doesn't count to my 7, does it? The big news is they're talking now. Chris Evans is like, yep, I'm hanging up the shield. So now everybody's speculating who's going to be the new Captain America. And I'm kind of like, maybe they don't need a Captain America for a while. Maybe he's just going to fade off into the sunset. And who knows? Maybe in 5-10 years he might come back.
Maybe he'll be Nomad.
There is always that.
The 50s Captain America who went crazy.
I've always thought one of the teasers they've got to have, and they should do it at the end. I don't know how fast they're banging out a Fantastic Four movie, but just one of these movies has got to have just, what's going to happen? What's that in the air? And a giant 4 forming in the air. Someday. It'll happen someday.
Sooner than we think.
I know.
Well, I think we've beaten this topic to death over 2 episodes. You know
Yes.
who doesn't beat
Well,
things?
episode and a half, to be fair.
You know who doesn't beat things to death, Joe?
Anybody doing a Rocky Horror Picture Show versus It remake?
No, these guys, our sponsors. That's right, here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network, we have ads, and our first sponsor is me. That's right, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. I have my first book out with Dangerous Dan Moore. It's the first 100 strips of our online web strip, Worldwide News, the story of the lowest rated cable news network. And you can get yourself a copy with commentary, with all sorts of extras, with signatures and everything. Just email Dan over at lordshadowflame@gmail.com. Our top sponsor, who's been with us since day one, is DreamHost. DreamHost.com. You need yourself a website, and DreamHost.com is the #1 web host in the whole known universe. Just head over to DreamHost.com, put in the code KRAYZ, KRAYZ, get $20 off your first year. How can you beat that? Our other sponsor is Graze, GRAZE.com. Healthy snacks for a healthy lifestyle. Just head over to Graze, put in the code CORYS3R5P. Your first and fifth box are free. You can get them weekly. You can get them bi-weekly. You can get them monthly. You can just order a whole bunch of them. It's great stuff to keep you away from the vending machine at work. Now, if you would like to leave a comment for any of the podcasts that we do, we'd love those. Go ahead and email us at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, or you can call 952-856-0519. Operators are standing by. Okay, it's just a place that will record your calls, but we'll play them on the air. We'll answer your questions. We love getting feedback. Tell us what you think. Ask a question. Suggest a topic. Be a guest. Send us your stuff. SolitaireRoseNetwork@gmail.com. If you would like to advertise on any of the Solitaire Rose radio shows, you can. Just email us at SolitaireRoseNetwork@gmail.com. Subject advertising. Thanks. And after we do our sponsors, we talk about all the podcasts that I do. And here's me talking about them right now. The Solitaire Rose Podcast Network is filled with all kinds of audio goodness. First, there's Crazy Comics and Stories. It's been going since 2010. It drops every Monday, and it has me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, and Joe Crazy Writer talking comics, shenanigans, and whatever we're freaking and geeking about. Every Monday morning. It's been going since 2010, and it's available at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. Also on that same feed is the Solitaire Rose Podcast, which is me, again, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, doing interviews, talking about comics history, pretty much talking about whatever I want to talk about. We've also got Solo Joe, where Joe Crazy Writer does a solo podcast, and he hasn't done one in a while, so kick him in the shins to get him started. We also, on that same feed, have Solitaire Rose Series and Review, where we do DVD commentary of older comic book series. That's all at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. I also do a podcast with Wolfie B. Bad at badadvice.solitairerose.com, where we take listener questions and give them bad advice. There's also Novelcast, where I take the novels I've written and turn them into free audiobooks. That's at novels.solitairerose.com. There's also Fantastic Forecast, where myself and Adam Vermillion are going through the entire run of the Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time. That's fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com. And if you think that I'm on all of these podcasts, you're wrong, because Scrabbling Across the West is at scrabbling.solitairerose.com, where musician Dave Cofell and his wife Stephanie travel across America and then sitting down to play Scrabble and talk about the day. That's at Scrabbling Across the West, scrabbling.solitairerose.com. There are always more podcasts at the Solitaire Rose Podcast Network. Be there. Aloha. Notice I don't say that you do because,
Nope.
Solo nope. Joe has been AWOL all year.
It's not on. It's a hiatus. It's been sent for retooling. We have to do one without Roseanne Barr.
I still say you're AWOL.
You're absent without leave.
You don't pay me leave, so you can't have me absent of it. Trust me, I know this shit, because that's how I'm getting by on my hip.
Speaking of your hip,
Matter of fact, if anything, I'm with you, LWAP, leave without pay.
well, absent without leave is just you're not around. But
You can't give me leave.
speaking of your hip, you've only got a few weeks left before I can't ask you
28
this
days.
anymore. Joe,
I know, you'll have to ask somebody else.
what's going on the eBays?
Let's see. Well, hold on another. I had a week where I crapped out, and I don't, I have been playing around with pricing. Matter of fact, I always make the offer. Why don't you call and lowball me? One of our listeners did.
What?
Laney Kinsey called and lowballed me on a Star Wars paperback from 1977 and a Tarzan 234 with from DC, 1975 with Joel Kubrick art.
Ooh.
Should feel proud that he lowballed me, and I give him free shipping too. See, that's the type of person I am. I did do a quick sale on pretty much everything across the board for 10%, but you guys know I'd give our listeners a better deal than that. So if you're looking, I am adding a few things here and there, but like Cory alluded to, I'm getting ready for the wrap up. I don't know how I'm going to be feeling after the hip, if I'll be able to do it. Right now, the plans are to probably just put it on vacation for a few weeks. And usually what eBay does is when you put something on vacation, it either has to disappear 100%, which I really don't want to do, or you can buy it and I just won't mail it for like a dozen weeks and destroy my rating and my credibility and my feedback. I mean, I know with my listeners I don't have any, but my eBay people I do. I got like 4,952. I'm closing in on the big 5,000.
Wow.
So if you go to KRAYZ, you too can leave me feedback and just say and I'll say thanks for listening.
And they'll
That's
give
all.
you a big hug.
No, you're not a hugger.
No, but you'll give them a big hug.
Unless somebody behind you has pie and by reaching around them you can get the pie. Then you're a hugger.
Okay, there is that.
Yeah.
And now we get to my favorite part of the show. No, not where I open up my boxes from Box Day.
Box Day.
Today was Box Day, Joe.
Mine is getting ready to ship, so I should have it next week.
It was double Box Day because I also got one from In Stock Trades because I ordered a bunch of the omnibuses that they were blowing out, including the X-Men Revolution by Chris Claremont that they were selling for 60% off. No, it's freaking and geeking. Joe, what are you freaking on? I know what you're freaking on, that it's not your Box Day.
No, not really, because I got plenty of stuff to read. Hence, we'll get to it when we get to geeking. I'm still kind of miffed at Walgreens. They've been saying that they've been sending out the Thing action figure, which is the final figure I need for the Fantastic Four set. And according to their website, every store in the Twin Cities has anywhere from 6 to 12 of them. Yet when I go to said stores, they ain't got nothing. So, really, Walgreens, get your fucking act together. I said it before. Here I was hoping to say, I forgive you, everything's better, but, your people in the store are great. They go in the back and they look, but damn it, your website says they're in the stores and they're not. And the way you ship them, they can't find them. For all I know, one person walked in and walked out with 12 of them. I don't know. And I'm pretty sure you as a corporation don't care. Like I said before, you got this period where you can start to own a little piece of the toy action. I mean, Lord knows Walgreens is stepping up their game, or Walmart, your other wall. I mean, they've made a big thing about how they're going to be doing collector items and exclusives, and they're really ramping it up because it's a couple $1 billion out of the $73 billion toy industry, just these exclusive things. I'm sure Target's doing it, and all the other guys, they want it, but you've got yours, and you just muffin it up. It's really frustrating, too. So, again, maybe next week I'll be able to say, hey, I got my Thing doll. Everything's forgiven. But, again, your website says every fucking store has one. None of them have them on the shelf. Nobody knows what I'm talking about.
I have a toy question, Joe.
Okay.
You mentioned that there's a Spider-Gwen exclusive figure. Which massive chain is that with?
I'm not even sure anymore. I know I've spotted Spider-Gwen figures in the regular line at when I went through Targets and Walmarts, but I don't know of the exclusive one. However, being that I have a handy-dandy Kraytron 3000, do you think the people at Google are back on? I know they walked out.
I think
Let's
we're okay.
let's put exclusive Spider-Gwen ears. And let's see. Target says they have one.
Oh!
Sideshow Collectibles says they have one.
So
Big
they're a
Bad Toy
Target
Store has one. Special Fiction Shop has one.
So it's a Target thing.
Possibly. I don't know if it's exclusive though. I just thought it was part of their. And these are the action figures. They're not the pop figures.
Right.
And of course, if you go to Big Bad Toy Store, you can get the San Diego Comic-Con 2016 exclusive figure,
Ooh.
which is they dropped it to $24.74 from $45. So that's not too bad.
No.
So yeah, they're about. I am bummed though because there were two cons that came through that I really, really wanted to go to. The first one, of course, was CryptCon, which was last weekend, because I wanted to go see Lee Majors. If I got a chance to see him and get the photo and the autograph, I'd say, you know what? Kids these days want to be Captain America, Superman, Spider-Man. I wanted to be the $6 million man because he was really the big superhero of the 70s that was on. I mean, yeah, you had Last Action Hero and Spider-Man and Hulk, but nobody was on for the seasons that $6 million man where nobody had the spin-off, nobody had the crossovers, nobody had Bionic Woman on NBC and $6 Million Man on ABC. It's a lot like what we were talking about today. Just same universe, just different stations. I'm also bummed that this weekend the Land of the Lost 2018 reunion's going on, and by the time you all are listening to this, it had happened, and it was even closer. Well, I shouldn't say CryptoCon was in Bloomington, but it was in Milwaukee, and for the first time ever, they had let's see, it was Kathy Coleman who played Holly, Wesley I think that's how you say his name. He played Will, and then of course Spence Milligan was going to be the one who played the dad. They didn't get Roy Harper to go, although I don't know if they asked. Maybe they just didn't want anything to do. If the dad and Uncle Jack get together, it'd probably it's like. But Cory, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you know what happened to Rick Marshall when he, in the third season, he ended up getting sucked out of the Land of the Lost? Do you know whatever happened to Rick Marshall?
Well, they didn't show it on the TV show that I remember because I watched the whole series a few years ago when they reran it on MeTV. But I would imagine, because they said someone had to come in for someone to go out, so he had to go back to the regular world for the uncle to come in, correct?
Yeah.
And?
Well, no. What he did is he changed his name to David, hung out at Mel's Diner, and became a nude model as he dated one of the waitresses.
Okay.
You never watched Alice?
No.
Spence Milligan showed up as a reoccurring character.
Okay.
It's so hard to talk continuity with you. And you're going to be in charge of Marvel, DC? Honestly.
There was another convention that you may not have known about, Joe.
What was that?
Did you hear about the Winona Earp convention that was held in Minneapolis?
I did. That was the same weekend as the MCVA's comic show.
Oh, okay.
So and it was really, I guess it turned out pretty good. I saw our good buddy, the only real man in comics, Bo Smith, talking about it. So I would have loved to have gone to it, but I was at the one-day show. I could have gone, I suppose, on Sunday, but I had to go back to work. I'm looking forward to having weekends off when I retire so I can actually go to these shows, because it would have been so cool. Just, one of our well, I don't know if he's a listener, but one of my old subscribers from Hot Comics is going to the show. He's going I think he says he's leaving Friday morning, driving to Milwaukee, attending the panel where the three are on, and then turning around and coming home. That's like at least 12 hours of driving with God knows how long. Because it's just happening Saturday, Sunday. So he's going there for Saturday. So that's enough. I think between being pissed off I can't go to cons and Walgreens, I think I'm plenty pissed off enough. Cory, what are you freaking on?
Joe, we talked a little about my new schedule. I don't know if we talked about it on the show or not, but my new schedule where I'll have weekends off, it's still not in place. Not only is it still not in place, but remember how they said, it'll probably be early October? I asked about it recently, and they said, we still don't know.
It's November as we're recording this, folks, just for you kind of following.
They still don't know.
Why me of this?
So that's why when I sent out my my little thing for my friends to say, hey, here's the stuff I'm doing over the next 2 months for the holidays. I want to go up to Duluth to the big, they've got this big Christmas walkthrough with beautiful lights by the lake, and NXT is coming to town. I'm excited about NXT. Now when WWE comes to town, I just kind of, I don't want to sit and, yeah. But NXT, I want to go see that because you got a lot of the people that I really like from indie wrestling, and the tickets are much cheaper. It's $20 to go to NXT. And the Brave New Workshop does their Christmas improv thing and all kinds of stuff going on. And so people were saying, well, I thought you could do stuff every weekend. It's no. Not yet. Also, I have so many goddamn passwords to things that I actually have a spreadsheet I keep the passwords in.
And you forgot the spreadsheet password.
No, I was at the group home, and I had to update my passwords for the 3 different things we have to sign into to do any of our logging. I had to change those 2 weeks ago. I did not update the spreadsheet.
Uh-oh.
So there I am for an hour last night. They asked me to come in an hour early. I spent the entire hour. Okay, is this the password? Is this the password? Is this the password? And you could ask me, Cory, why didn't you just call IT and have them reset the password? I said you could ask me, Cory, why didn't you call IT and have them reset the password?
It's a trap. I refuse.
Because IT shuts down at 6 in the evening.
Oh, I thought it was because you didn't want to spend 2 hours on hold.
Nope, they shut down at 6 in the evening. So if you work evenings or weekends, you're fucked.
Screwed.
But I finally remembered them, and I wrote them down, and And then the last thing I am freaking on, Joe, I love me the omnibuses.
Omnibus, yes.
And in my box, I haven't opened it yet, but in my box is the American Vampire Omnibus.
Really?
Yeah.
That Vertigo.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I realized that I ordered that I ordered it in January. What are you doing?
I'm one of my geekings. I'm opening a Hot Wheel car.
Oh, okay.
I suppose I should wait. It's rude otherwise.
But I ordered it back in January. And it was so long ago, I forgot they were even doing it.
And you ordered 2?
I really, really hate the long lead times on the omnibuses. I forget one of the Marvel omnibuses that you'll be ordering this month. It doesn't show till like August. And, we use a discount comic book service, so you're paying for stuff in advance. And it's like, I am paying for this stuff 9 months, 10 months before it shows up. Joe, what are you geeking on?
Cory, have you ever danced with a queen to the time warp?
Yes.
Well, so have I.
Depending on what you mean by a queen.
Well, a drag queen, of course.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
Yeah, I went to the Union Rooftop. A lot of unions in Minnesota, so you gotta make sure you get the right one. Union Rooftop, which is a new American restaurant in downtown Minneapolis. And we went for they called it the Halloween 2018 Clue drag party. And of course, the people I went with probably were thinking, Clue, oh, this is going to be kind of a murder mystery thing. No, it wasn't. It was basically you had the clues, you got to watch the drag queens dance and perform. And then at the end of the night, if you were smart enough, you put together clues to figure out who did it, in what room, with what instrument.
Okay, cool.
And I was totally lost because I was having just a fine time watching the performers, which was just a lot of fun. One of them, called the Destroyer, got me up during the time warp. And so my last hips hurrah was doing the time warp again with I don't know if you call him, her. Well, either way, it was a lot of fun. And of course, a couple of the women that were with us got up to do their gang toity thing, and they're like, "Oh, why did I miss that?" I said, "Well, my wife didn't. She got me on camera." But we got a couple of me doing that, so it was kind of a fun night. I don't know if everybody with us were necessarily pleased with what we ended up doing. But once I figured out what the hell was going on, because I got to admit, some of those drag queens are pretty hot looking, I just kind of sat down and enjoyed it. The meal was awesome, and, just a fun night. So that was how I spent my Halloween. Cory, how'd you spend your Halloween?
I worked.
Oh, that's Thanksgiving you do Mystery Science Theater.
Yes. But the good thing is, I did leave treats out for the trick-or-treaters. I sent you a picture.
I did. I saw that. And there was a dead body in it, wasn't
No, it was broccoli.
That must have been somebody else.
I left out a bowl of broccoli and said, just take one.
And I bet that was cheese sauce somebody poured all over it,
Nope,
too.
when I came home, the broccoli was all still there. Not even the raccoons and the possums wanted it.
The raccoons, I understand. But the possums, they usually eat anything.
I know. And usually, the raccoons eat what I make and then bitch and complain about it for years.
Well, no, that's only if you travel across the city to do it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. I did start The Good Place season 2 at your urging and some other people's, and oh my God, we're 4
I
episodes
told
in.
you.
It's freaking amazing. This is why I am a purveyor. How do you say it? Not a purveyor. A connoisseur of good writing, and not a writer myself, because I couldn't have written that show if you gave me $1 billion. It's just a lot of fun, and we haven't. One of these evenings, we'll probably sit down. It's just my wife and I are going to watch it. Where we start at 7 and then we just go till 10 or 11, however late. So it probably won't be till later on once I get my hip done that I'll start it up, or it might be next week. I just never know. I know tonight my wife's out meeting friends and I'm here podcasting. Part of the reason I'm here podcasting because I actually went and saw my rheumatologist today, and in today's hip watch, we're all good with that. The meds are good. Nothing's going to counteract what the meds are going to give me. He's really, it's a young guy. Again, another young guy. Boy, doctoring's a young guy's game. But he's really concerned. I've been talking about how my wrists have been sore, and he's like, well, we're going to up one of your meds and see if that helps, but we probably won't know how it reacts until 4 weeks from now. And I'm like, well, 4 weeks from now, I'll be in so much pain, I won't even know what the hell's going on. So
Yeah, but you'll have.
that's taken care of. Oh, God, I hope so. So that's what's going through me. And like my wife says, you got 28 days until you're hip, as opposed to me, who says, I got 4 weeks. That seems farther off for some reason.
Joe, when you're all hopped up on goofballs, we need to do a podcast.
It's not so much that I got to do a podcast. It's just that I got to be able to sit long enough to do a podcast.
No. I want to do one when you're hopped up on goofballs.
Hey, I wouldn't do one. You wouldn't let me do one when you got home and you're all hepped up from getting your gallbladder removed.
That's because I wasn't on pain pills.
I don't care. It would have been fun.
No.
But no.
You were in the car. I was not fun.
I wasn't in your car. I was driving your
Right.
car.
You were in the car. I was not fun.
You were with Butch. No, Butch said if he had a recorder, he would have recorded you.
No.
All I remember is we had to stop making you laugh.
Yes, because it hurt so goddamn much.
I know, and that was the worst thing you could have told us. Stop making me laugh. Okay. Speaking of making me laugh, I'll get into what I've been reading, because usually what I do is it won't be next week, probably a week after when I get my previews. So we'll do one last previews before I'm off the board. But I get I read my comics, and then I tend to read a non-comic thing, like I talked about the book Korea, where the American Century Began by Michael Pembroke, which I just sold on eBay, ironically, because I bought it on eBay. Bought it, sell it. I should just gone to the library and got it, but that's not the way I work. But I did have a chance to read an awful lot of graphic novels. First one, I basically took this one, and we got a 3-season porch that faces the sun. This time of year in Minnesota, it's usually about 40, 50 degrees outside, but it's been really sunny the last couple of days. So that porch gets up to like 70 degrees. And so I bring out a drink, and when I don't have a stack of comics, I'll bring out a graphic novel, and I'll just read till I fall asleep. And then I wake up again and do it again. The first one I attacked was Bloom County, Best Read on the Throne. See, I just don't follow directions. This, of course, is Berkeley Breathed's online stuff. And this one's not too bad in terms of where he's referring to events that were going on. I tend to remember a few of them. So it's like when he comes off with some obscure thing, it's like, oh, yeah, I remember him talking about that. But, if you're a Bloom County fan, this is just a lot of fun because this is basically uncensored, unfiltered, and he's doing what he wants as opposed to trying to bang something out weekly and then or daily and then, coming back later and discovering I didn't like it that much. The one Marvel Knights book I bought was Fantastic Four 1, 2, 3, 4. Grant Morrison, Jay Lee. Again, this one has those stupid, shiny black covers that I fucking hate, which is why I probably won't buy any other Marvel Knights books because, boy, I got so many freaking thumbprints on this thing. But it was worth it. The book was fabulous. Why? I mean, I guess I understand why they put it as a Marvel Knight book. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't understand why it was a Marvel Knight book. It could have just fit in the regular Marvel universe, but it was Grant Morrison. It was a lot of fun. Maybe they paid him more money for it. It's definitely worth reading. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and you gotta love it when. Let's see if I can find it. Dr. Doom is springing the trap on the Fantastic Four, and he's got. He thinks he's got Mr. Fantastic down, and Mr. Fantastic kind of looks at him and says, well, Vic, I've been thinking. And that's the end of one of the issues. And I'm like, wow, that is a line you don't necessarily want Mr. Fantastic saying if you're on his bad side. Speaking of bad sides, actually, that was kind of more of a dark side way of transforming.
Dark side.
I read Aquaman Book 2 by Peter David. A lot of this stuff I remember reading when it first came out, but this is what, 80s stuff, right?
No, 90s. Mid-90s.
Was it 90s?
Mid-90s, because
Okay.
remember, he got dark and gritty by losing his hand.
Yep, 95, 96. And this one reprints 9 through 20, and the annual being a year one, which was kind of fun. And a lot of these stories, I got to admit, I just plain forgot. I mean, I forgot where they were going, or they went from issue to issue, and I didn't quite catch the continuity between it. But you sit down and you read them as a graphic novel, it's a lot of fun. And Peter David does a fantastic job of just flowing one into the other issue. And again, it's kind of like his Hulk one. If you've never read it, just sit down and enjoy it because it's a lot of fun. And then, of course, over at Abstract Studio became The Chase, which is, Strangers in Paradise, Volume 25? Am I reading that right? XXV? It's crazy Romans. This is, he's bringing the series back. And, of course, we see what Kachu and Francine's been up to. It ties into the previous miniseries he did, Echo. You don't necessarily have to read it to know what's going on, but again, it's kind of, if you've read Echo and then you come into this, they take place in the same universe, which is kind of cool because then I wonder if the rest of his stuff that he's written ties into it, like Rochelle Rising or Motor Girl. And of course, Motor Girl, you'll like, Cory, because it has a giant talking gorilla. Took me a while to figure out what was going on because there's a little bit of that time displacement. Here's what happened in the past. Here's what's happening now. But he hasn't lost his touch. It's just a lot of fun. And the story ends I know he's going to continue the single issues, but for me, much more satisfying reading it as a graphic novel. A while back, I talked about a book from Paige Braddock, Jane's World, which was based on her online strip that she, I don't want to say developed, but she was at the Charles Schultz Museum, or either working with Charles Schultz. I got to reread the thing while she was coming up with this. In my vast accumulation of crap, I ran across Jane's World, Volume 1. This was a book that I had in my Hot Comics, because again, I was big on independent comics, so I probably just opened it up. I read it. Some of it's reprinted in the aforementioned book. That book that just came out is called Love Letters to Jane's World. So this one I read, it had some strips I haven't seen before. It had a bunch of strips that were in the previous book. And there's also things that she glosses over that are probably on the online strip that you could probably go see. So this book is eBay bound because, like I said, I've got the other one. And I just wanted to read it before it disappeared. Cory, you read Why the Last Man?
Yes.
This one is based on a similar premise where basically the Y chromosome just disappeared. They never figured out why, and man just kind of disappeared. And it was a gradual thing. It didn't happen overnight. When it first happened, people denied it. And then there was a war, and the world got distracted because there were natural disasters going on. And civilization fell. The world spiraled into chaos. Nobody listened to the doctor, her theory about men. And finally it ended up, they noticed that there weren't many men left. There became a black market for buying and selling of men and male ejaculation. And unfortunately, Dr. Sharma, the one who came up with that, he never was able to figure out what happened because he passed away before he was able to figure it out, survived by his wife and 2 daughters. Very ironic. And then there were no men. Well, this basically starts years later in a village, and it's more of a humor type take. It's actually turns out a world without men is very funny, and this is from Drawn and Quarterly, I believe. Yep, and it's called Woman's World by Minder Dalawal. You know me, I'm terrible with names. And it's just kind of a interesting, I don't know what you call it, slice of life, but we're dealing more with the people that are living in this village and what's going on outside. One of the more endearing strips deals with, there's a young girl, could be 5, could be 6, never really has seen a man, so she talks to her grandma about what men were like. The only thing that this young girl has seen that reminds her of men is she got a copy of what we would recognize as Mall Cop. So she wonders, why did men drive around on 2-wheel scooters all the time? And just a delightful series. I think it just was published, so it should be on the shelves. If not, you could definitely order it. And just kind of deals with some of the different things going on, the relationships going on, and kind of a different take on a world without man. I think that's pretty much it for me, geeking wise. Other than you heard me opening up some Hot Wheels. One of the guys locally had twice a year he opens up his garage, sells off all the extra Hot Wheels he has, does different sales. So I went over and I did find my Deadpool chimichanga truck that has a little tiny Deadpool inside it. That's what I was opening now. So now anytime I feel like it, I can look up and see Deadpool in his chimichanga truck trying to sell me a Galactus-sized person to his little tiny Deadpool a chimichanga. So I got that going for me.
Which is nice.
Cory, what do you got, geeking?
Wrestling-wise, I watched one of the best tag team matches I have ever seen in my life. Go to the YouTubes. It should be there. It's not legally there, but it should be there. And look up Golden Lovers versus the Young Bucks. This was done earlier this year. The Golden Lovers are Kenny Omega and Kyoto Ibushi, and the Young Bucks are the Young Bucks. And it starts off The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega have had a falling out, so this match is where they are going to settle the score. It is a 40-minute match. It starts slowly and builds and builds and builds. And one of the problems I've had with the Young Bucks, and I've talked about it here, I've talked about it when I do stuff at PW Insider, is they do cool moves. But the moves, it's, somebody does a pile driver and they pop right up. Or somebody gets their head slammed on the concrete and 30 seconds later they're fine. This match, they've learned how to tell a story, and the story starts slowly and builds over time. You get the Golden Lovers, who are they were a tag team in the past. They're back together. The Young Bucks aren't happy about it, so you've got all of that drama, and it's all being told through the wrestling and through the moves and through their reactions. And it is very much like an old school 80s match sped up for modern time. All I can say is I watched this match, and by the end of it, I was exhausted because it had taken me on a huge roller coaster of, near falls and betrayals and moves that just make your head spin. And it's the best that pro wrestling can be in that pro wrestling is not just two guys trying to fight each other, pretending to fight each other. It's people telling a story through making things look like a fight. And it's why, whenever comic book fans go, oh, I don't like wrestling. Well, then why are you reading superhero books? Because they're telling same sorts of stories. Just the best match I've seen in a while. This has been a year where New Japan has been knocking it out of the park. The Kenny Omega, Rainmaker, Okada match, their third match. Hour long, blew me away. Now you've got Golden Lovers. Again, another Kenny Omega match. I have deep love for Kenny the Cleaner Omega. It's why I've got 7 of his shirts, Joe.
Well, thank God. It's about time you change your shirts.
The next thing that I'm geeking on is I am what they call a patient gamer. Joe, have you ever heard the term patient gamer?
No, that's what you hear me clicking in the background. I'm playing a game. I got to finish now. I got to do it. I mean, I know I got 127 days to finish it, but goddamn, I got to finish now.
A patient gamer is someone who doesn't buy the games when they come out. They wait. And, because Red Dead Revolver #2 came out, and it was the highest grossing anything, movie, video game, whatever, that's ever come out. I'll get to it in a couple of years when I can buy it used for $15. And I love it because I am able to pick up these games that are so much fun. Yeah, I don't have a lot of time for gaming anyway. So it's like somebody asks, well, what are you playing? Oh, I'm playing Dead Space 2. And they're like, that game came out like 6-7 years ago. I know, but I haven't played it. And it's so awesome. And I paid $10 for it rather than, the guy who, well, I played it 6 years ago. How much you pay for it? $65. Yeah. So, and if you have Xbox Gold, you get 4 free games every month. Quite honestly, that's more than enough games for me because I don't play 4 games a month. They're not the brand new game. It's older games that it's like, okay, sales on this are down. We'll give it away for free. I mentioned a little earlier, I am geeking on the fact that it is double box day. I had a lot of extra time at both jobs, so it's like, I'll go to in-stock trades, take advantage of one of the sales they're having. That showed up today, as did my regular box day, so it's a double box day. Too bad I worked this weekend, because I won't have time to read any of it. But still, it's a double box day, Joe. They also have announced the new writer on Wonder Woman. Joe, did you hear who it was?
No.
G. Willow Wilson.
Ooh.
The writer on Ms. Marvel. And if her stuff on Wonder Woman is half as good as the stuff on Ms. Marvel, I'm going to be hooked. Because quite honestly, Wonder Woman's not a character that thrills me. Wonder Woman's very, very dependent on the creative team for me. If it's not a creative team that I really, really like, if it's just kind of an average creative team, I could not care less about Wonder Woman. This has finally got me excited about Wonder Woman, and I can't wait to see how she's going to do. This is one that I will, what I want to do is do like I'm doing with the Tom King Batman, where I get it in the hardcovers. They're putting out those hardcovers for Rebirth. I'll see if I can wait. And then the last thing I'm geeking on is one of the trade paperbacks. I didn't have a lot of reading time over the last week because at my full-time job we're on a busy season. And at the group home, because they're bringing in new staff and the new staff aren't lasting very long, they're asking me, can you come in early? Can you stay late? Can you do an extra overnight shift, etc., etc.? Tonight I actually get to sleep in my bed for the first time in over a week. But I read the Doctor Strange Avengers Darkhold trade, which gathers up all the stories about the Darkhold, which is this ancient evil book in the Marvel Universe. And I love the fact that it's Doctor Strange and the Avengers. What's the first story? Werewolf by Night. What's the second story? Mordred the Mystic. What's the next story? Eventually there's some Doctor Strange stuff, and there's one Avengers story, the one where we find out where they go to Mount Wundagore to find out the origin of Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. But for the most part, it's just all these stories that talk about the Darkhold, and it's funny how it ties into what we were talking about earlier in that, okay, they plant this seed, and then a couple years later, oh, here's a character that has to do with that. And then, a couple years later, oh, we're going to take it and add more to it. And the whole story lasts over, like, I don't know, almost 15 years. And it leads up to using the Darkhold to eliminate all vampires in the Marvel Universe.
Is it the same creators doing it,
Oh,
or were
hell
they
no.
just people piecing the sandbox together?
People piecing the sandbox together. Somebody grabs this part, and then somebody grabs this part, and then somebody adds to it. And that was one of the things I loved about Marvel in the 70s. And Steve Gerber talked about it all the time. He would just throw story seeds out there, and then figure out what to do with them later. Like the elf with the gun.
Yeah.
He didn't know what he was going to do with it. He just was throwing it in there, and he said, well, it'll build for a while, and then, maybe after a year or so, I'll get a story out of it. But I really like doing it because Sal Buscema loves drawing the elf with the gun. And then he left, was replaced by the editor-in-chief, who then left. And then the next creator, and then Sal Buscema left, and the next creator went, I don't know what to do with this fucking elf. Have him get hit by a bus. Boom, there you go. And Gerber said it was the greatest. He loved it. He loved it. Wrote a letter to the guy who did it. Said, that's the greatest thing you've done. But it's the same with the Darkhold. Gary Conway. Oh, it has to do with werewolves. Oh, and then Mordred the Mystic. Well, he's the one who worked with the book, and it turned him evil. And oh, Doctor Strange, of course, knows about it because this is Book of Great Power, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this kind of gathers all that up. And it was a fun read because it really showed how Marvel was expert at that. And I think it's because a lot of the creators were like, I want to play with that toy. Can I play with that toy? And I don't know if we'll ever get to that point again where somebody just starts dropping hints and somebody else grabs a piece of it and on and on and on. But that's why I love 70s Marvel. Believe it or not, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for an hour and a half.
I'd say get a life, but who would listen to us?
This is a life. It's a podcast life. It's a comic book life.
It's a podcast life. It's a podcast life.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
We say that?
I say it.
I thought we said nothing is scarier than attempting the first fart after having diarrhea. Hit my music.